Welcome back to the Optimized Equine Podcast. Joining us today is David Reichert from the United Dressage and Jumping Club, or UDJC. For those who might not be familiar, the UDJC is an organization dedicated to offering affordable, accessible, and fair horse shows modeled after the best standards of European equestrian sport. Their mission is creating rider-first events that foster real development for horses and riders of all ages, with an emphasis on education, opportunity, and integrity. David brings a wealth of experience to our discussion today, and we'll be exploring some compelling topics around UDJC's innovative approach to competition, from their qualification system to their ability-based dressage classes and group jumping formats. David will share insights on how their unique approach is reshaping what competitive equestrian sport can look like. So with that, let's dive into this conversation with David Reichert from UDJC. Hello, and welcome to the Optimized Equine Podcast. Thank you for joining me today, David. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate being here. Very excited.
I'd like to get started by having you tell us a little bit just about your personal background and how that ultimately led to you creating UDJC.
Well, that's kind of a long story, so I don't know how deep you want to dig into it, but I grew up in the horse world in Germany. I've been riding since I'm 3 years old, and I've done dressage and jumping up to the highest levels. My mom forced me to ride dressage, which I hated when I was a kid, and I appreciate it a lot now. So she always said, if you want to ride whatever, this a meter 10 jumping class, you got to ride second level dressage first. And if you want to ride a meter 40, you got to ride fourth level dressage first. So I went all the way in both and ended up on national teams in both disciplines in Germany. And so kind of grew up very professional in a very professional equestrian environment. And I came to the US in 2019. Well, it's a lie. I've been to the US 2006 and 7 already, because at the end of 2005, I rode a 30-day stallion testing in Connecticut for the RPSI back then. And then one of the ladies asked me if I want to keep riding one of the stallions in Texas. And I stayed in Texas for 2 years and rode horses here. And then I went back to Germany and founded my tech company. It's called Magic Tech. We produce brow bands and saddle pads and gloves and stuff like that. And at the end of 2019, we decided to come back to the US, just because for the tech company. So my wife and my daughter back then moved back to Houston to start Magic Tech here. And then as soon as we had everything set up and everything was ready to go, COVID hit. And so we put everything on ice because it was a very weird time, to start a brand, obviously. So we just said, okay, let's put it on ice for a few weeks and then see how everything goes. And weeks became months. And at some point we said, okay, we have to get off the couch and we have to do something here. I mean, it's ridiculous. So I still had a few contacts here in the Houston area. So we went to a barn that had a bunch of open stalls and we started riding horses. And within a couple of weeks, we had like 20 full training horses. My wife had 10 and I had 10. And we just got back into horses pretty much, even though that wasn't the plan. And then our property came up for sale. The property where we live at right now came up for sale. And we decided to buy the property, still with the goal to do Magic Tech. We wanted to take 8 customers from the other barn with us because we only had 8 stalls. And we wanted to do the horses in the morning and then Magic Tech the rest of the day. And well, out of that, we developed a lot of things happened. And out of that, we developed a riding school. It's called Paulina's Ponies. And it became very big. And we started taking kids to shows. And then my frustration with the USCF system, of course, started. And so one thing came to another. And that led to October last year when I said, okay, now it's enough. So I have to sit down and just get a new concept going here. And that's how UDJC was born pretty much. So came for the tech company, and then everything developed into a different direction.
Gotcha. So came for the tech company, had a lesson program, and solved your own problem that you discovered when you had the lesson program.
Yeah. Well, that was another problem. So I started going to shows, to dressage shows mainly with the horses we had in full training, and realized there are no kids in dressage, and it's just a weird atmosphere at the shows. And talked to a couple of ladies from the local dressage society, from the the local dressage people, and they were cocky and they were like, "Oh yeah, kids is dressage is not for kids," and all this crap. And I said, "Okay, so the area is not really good. Dressage is not really good here. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to fix it?" And they said, "Well, we need better horses and better trainers from Europe." And I said, "Well, the better trainers from Europe, they're not going to come. Don't worry. And the better horses, nobody can ride. So what do you want to do? We need a kids program. We need riding schools. We need a qualification system. Blah 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 blah." So I went on this monologue for like 30 minutes explaining them what we need to do, and they said, after 30 minutes, they're like, "No, young man, we need better horses from Europe and better trainers from Europe." And I'm like, "Dude." So, okay, I told him, "Listen, don't worry about it. I'm going to do it myself." And then I came home and I told my wife, "Hey, we have to change something here. So let's go buy some ponies." And then that's how we kind of started the riding school. And well, within a year or so, we had 250 kids and 1,000 lessons at least. And so it just, came like that. And then we started taking the kids to dressage and jumping shows, to just regular recognized dressage and jumping shows here in Texas. And then this is when I really discovered all the problems with everything that's going wrong. And then for 5 years, of course, or 4 or 5 years, I complained and talked to a bunch of people and tried to change things, talk to people on board, talk to judges, talk to whoever, and realized, okay, nothing is going to change. So not even 1% is going to change, and we need to change 100% here, or 90%, and nothing is going to change. So then finally, after, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, I said, okay, we got to do it ourselves. I didn't want to do it because I know how much work it is. It's ridiculous, but I realized, okay, nobody's going to do anything, so I have to do it.
All right. Now, for someone who is unfamiliar, can you give us a bit of an overview of what the European system is compared to the U.S. system?
Yes. So the European system, first of all, at least this is how it is in Germany and in most of the European major horse countries, requires qualification for everything. So you cannot just show up and ride whatever you want. So that is one very important thing. The second very important thing is that dressage and jumping is kind of combined. So every single kid that starts out to ride does both. So you have to ride dressage, you have to ride jumping, you have to get riding badges where the judges come to the barn during the winter typically, and the trainers collect all the kids from the surrounding barns and they have to take their riding badges. So you have to do the first riding badge, which is a theory test, and then a little dressage test and a little jumping course. And the second riding badge follows on the first one, obviously. You have to do a bigger theory test, and you have to ride a 95 centimeter jumping course, and you have to ride a first level dressage test. And if you don't ride that well in front of the judge, well, then you're not going to the show. So the entry barrier to go to technically recognized shows is already higher. But also, dressage and jumping as one thing is something completely normal for us. There is no pure dressage path and no pure jumping path. I mean, everybody up to a decent level or through the basic levels has to do both. If nobody decides, I'm just going to be a dressage rider, and starting from beginner, super beginner tests, they just do dressage. Everybody jumps, everybody does dressage. The shows are combined, the barns are combined. At higher level shows and higher level barns, you have a separation. You have some big shows, of course, that there are only dressage shows, only jumping shows. But typically your everyday show, 90% of those shows have a dressage arena and a jumping arena, and you're sitting in the middle eating lunch and you watch some dressage and you watch some jumping. So everybody knows what the other one is doing. And that's a big problem here, that nobody knows what the other one's doing. You go to a recognized show and you ask 1,000 of these hunter kids, not a single one of them knows what a dressage class is. Not a single one of them has ever done a dressage class or a dressage lesson or something like that. They don't know what a circle is. It's sad. And the other way around, you know how many ladies I know that have been riding dressage for 40 years and they have never seen a horse jumping over a jump in real life? It's crazy, because everything is so separated, and that's a big problem. Because, people here, they're like, oh, I'm a jumper. Well, I'm a dressage rider. Well, I'm a hunter. Well, You're not, this is all one thing. You just ride the horse well, and then it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you ride a dressage class or a hunter class or a jumper class. It's all the same thing. So this early specializing in something is just, in my opinion, completely wrong. It doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm. And for you, it doesn't make sense because you do have this other background. So you're like, this made sense. Why are you doing this? For someone who has no exposure, what are the downsides that this early specialization lead to?
You don't have a thorough education at all. Like it's the lack of thorough education. And it's not only the dressage jumping hunter thing, it's also in most barns, the kids are not learning the absolute basics, like taking care of the horse, which is a massive problem. They show up at the barn, the groom got the horse ready, they jump on, they canter one round, they jump over always the same hunter courses back and forth, and then they give the horse back to the groom or the trainer and go back home. And that's the absolute opposite of what needs to be done, or what should be done in the sport. It's mainly, it always comes back to, it's about the horse. It's about the horse first. And the sport is actually training the horse and training the rider, and not show driven, not success driven. Success is something that comes automatically, but everything here is kind of driven for the goal of being successful at shows, and everything that it actually needs, it actually requires to be successful at shows, is kind of wishy-washy. And that's where, the thoroughness is not there.
Mm-hmm. And not to derail us too much off the European system conversation there. So you're saying they have more of a foundation, and there's not so much specialization, and then maybe the specialization doesn't come in until much farther down the line?
Yes. The specialization comes way later than it comes here. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of things bad in Europe. I don't want anybody to get the impression that I think, everything in Europe is so good and everything in America is so bad. That's absolutely not the case. We have a lot of bad trainers in Europe. A lot of people think you need to have some kind of education and stuff like that, and testing and all that in order to become a trainer in Germany. That is absolutely wrong. You don't need anything in Germany to be a trainer. So I don't know where this comes from, that, everybody thinks that. We do have great education if you want to do that, in order to become a trainer. We have the Bereiter education, and we have different trainer, ABC. We have the master education. So there's very thorough education. But if you want to open up a horse business, you can open up a horse business. The difference is, if you open up a horse business in Germany and you're not good, you have exactly 0 customers. Here, you open up a horse business and you're not good, you can still do whatever, you can have a huge customer base.
One question on the regulation side of thing. If you want to call yourself a professional at a horse show, like, is that regulated there?
No. Well, yeah, it is.
Okay.
If you make your money riding horses, it's very similar to here. If you are getting paid to ride horses or to teach lessons, then you're a professional. But the professional status in Germany is also something that is nobody really cares about, because the classes are mixed anyways. So professionals and amateurs are always combined. There is very seldomly that there are classes just for amateurs or just for professionals. I think it's getting a little more the last few years, and I've been gone now for 6 years. But from what I've heard, we're getting kind of more and more amateur classes. But typically, 90%, 95% of everything is amateurs, professionals, kids, ponies. It's juniors, young riders. It's all combined in one class at regular shows.
Okay.
But you can be a professional, you can have a barn, you can have a professional status at the show, all that without having theoretically any education. So that's a misconception that happens here. There are tests, there is a whole 3-year, like the German Bereiter, it's called Bereiter. Everybody says Bereiter here. Education is 3 years. It's very intense. It's 3 years. You're in a barn, at always the same barn, with a master, with a meister, and you ride, I think 4 days a week, you're at the barn from 6 in the morning to 10 at night, and you ride a bunch of horses, and you have to do a bunch of stuff around the barn. And then 2 days of the week, you go to school, to an actual school where you learn the business part of it and the theory part of it and all that. And that takes 3 years. And after that, you have your Thoroughbred education. And on top of that, this is not something that you start from the scratch. So in order to get a spot in this, in order to get a spot at somebody's barn to take you on, you have to be a good rider already, and you have to be knowledgeable already. So this is 3 years on top of 10 years that you spend already being in the sport, typically. So, so, that all exists, but I'm saying you don't need it in order to run a business in Germany. But, a lot of very, very good people don't have any of that. So we have absolutely fabulous riders in this country. We have absolutely fabulous horsemen in this country here in America. And we also have good people in Europe, of course. But, it's not, the US is not lacking horsemanship skills or riding skills. And none of that is the case. Probably some of the best horsemen in the world are Americans. Also in other disciplines. It's not only the English world that exists. So we have great horsemen here. The problem is in the, let's call it the lower level education, the lower level path. USEF is the massive problem behind everything, because USCF sets normal people up for failure. And what I mean with that is the USCF system, if you look at hunters and jumpers, is so wrong that normal barns have to do the wrong thing in order to make the kid successful. There's no path to do the right thing and be successful at the same time. So do you want me to explain that, or you want me to?
Well, yeah, I'd love to. I grew up in that, you know what I mean? So I have a lot of thoughts on it and experience with it, but please do. Yes.
So, and this is the main difference between the UDJC system, which is, kind of almost the German system with a few twists, and USCF. If a mom with a 7-year-old kid comes to our riding school and she asks me, how long does it take for my kid to be successful at shows? Well, I tell them, of course, it depends on the kid and how often they ride, blah, 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 blah. But you typically stay in the riding school for, let's say, 2 years until you can walk, trot, canter, and jump over some little jumps. Then you typically have to buy or lease a pony or a horse and ride 6 days a week in our full training program. And then it still takes you a year roundabout to be good enough to even go to a show and ride a 70 centimeter jumping class, because these 70 centimeter jumping classes at the shows, they're not 6-7 jumps at 60-70 centimeter. They're like 12-13 jumps and combinations and bendy lines. That's not really beginner stuff. So it takes you another year from jumping over a few cross rails until you're able to ride a course like that. So now you're in 3 years, and then you can go to your first shows. The hunter path, that's a different story. So I'm just talking about our riding school now, where we do dressage and jumping. We don't do any hunters. So it takes you 3 years until you can technically go to a show. And then I tell them, once we go to the show, it's going to take you another 3 years until I'm going to allow you to be successful, because I'm not going to let you race in 70s. I'm not going to let you race in 80s. I'm not going to let you race in 90s. When you ride a meter 5, meter 10, somewhere in that area, then we can talk about riding some jump offs, and then we can talk about riding a little faster. So that takes you another 3 years, pretty much, typically on average, to make it from 70 centimeter to a meter. That's about 3 years. So I'm pretty much telling everybody it's going to take you 6 years until you can win the first ribbon in this sport. And that is the correct way to do it. In those 70s, 80s, 90s, you have to learn how to ride. You have to ride with proper aids. You have to, that's where your whole foundation comes from. In these classes, you're not supposed to race in these classes. It's not only dangerous, it's also stupid, because somebody who learns how to ride fast in 70s, 80s, 90s, it's out of control. It's just fast riding, but not smart fast riding. It's dangerous fast riding. And on top of that, on top of a base like that, you cannot build a high-level career. That's why these kids hit a wall at 1.10 m, at 1.15 m, maybe at 1.20 m, depends on the quality of the horse and all these things. But it doesn't build a thorough education racing in 70-centimeter classes. So I allow them to ride fast whenever they're halfway decent riders, which is typically at 1.10 m. So I tell them right from the beginning, 6 years, we're going to win the first ribbon. 6 years. And they're like, oh, 6 years. Well, the barn around the corner, they told me they can take the kid to the show in 4 weeks and, do like a walk trot class or something on a sedated 25-year-old horse. And then everybody gets a blue ribbon. I'm like, well, good. So then you got to go there. That's the difference between, 4 weeks successful and 6 years. One is the correct path and the other one is the wrong path. So what UDJC is doing, we have style classes. Everything below 95 centimeter is judged on style. So it's pretty much equitation classes. We don't judge the horse at all. I know in theory, equitation classes are not supposed to judge the horse either, but they still do. There's a million interviews out there with judges that say, oh yeah, we judge the horse and the rider, blah, blah, blah. So we judge only the ability of the rider riding a jumping class. And it starts at 40 centimeter over little cross rails. So in our 40, 50, and 60 centimeter classes, we have a little flat glass pretty much included into the jumping class. So the riders go into the ring in groups of 4, and they ride a little walk, trot, canter, a couple of transition, and then everybody individually rides the jumping course. And it starts at 4 cross rails from the trot. 40 centimeter high, like little cross rails. That is the smallest class we have, but we give them scores and marks for their little dressage part and then for the little jumping part. So if you can take somebody out of the riding school after 1.5 years or 2 years that can walk, trot, canter and jump some little jumps and bring them to the show, and you can reward them for doing the right thing, which is riding correctly, riding nicely with a good seat, good rhythm, good lines. All of that is being rewarded. It's not rewarded in USCF. In USCF, you have to be fast in order to get rewarded. The system helps the trainers a lot because the system encourages a different focus on the training. If, let's say, you teach the kid that is on a 70, 80 centimeter level to ride fast all the time, and this is your goal, to go to the show and to ride fast, you're not creating a good rider. But if you teach the kid that is on a 70, 80 centimeter level, you have to ride nicely in a good rhythm, good balance, good, a nice forward movement, yada, yada, yada. Well, then you create a way better rider. So if you train for the success on that one path, you're doing the wrong thing. If you train for success on the UDJC path, you're doing the right thing because you help the kid to become a better rider. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, as someone who grew up in this, every single thing you're describing is why I personally would have always said, I'm a hunter girl through and through. I do not like the jumpers. It's not for me. And my experience is, a bunch of full classes, like you said, up to that point where they start to hit the wall, a bunch of scary shit.
Mm-hmm. It's a bunch of scary shit.
For someone growing up in that world, I didn't like jumpers. That was never my thing. And that is exactly why I was a hunter and equitation person. Now, it kind of sounds like you're not the biggest fan of hunters either.
It's not true. No, I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah, so okay. I'm not a fan of low-level hunters because the hunters are cool. If I like to watch an international derby, you know what I mean? That's skillful riding. You need to be a very good rider in order to ride an international derby nicely. We can agree on that. You have to be a good rider. I'm just saying you don't have to be a hunter in order to ride that nicely. You can take every single 1.50 m rider from Europe, and I'm saying from Europe just because they don't even know what hunters are. You can also take an American, but they don't know what hunters are. But you can take a random 1.50 m rider from Germany who has never heard of hunters because they don't exist anywhere in the world, not really, not like the US hunters. And you can bring him over here and you can say, here, this is what we're going to do today. Watch one horse go, and then you get on that horse and you ride that 4'6" international derby just like, the other guy. And guess what they do? They ride it beautifully. They don't even know what hunters are, but they can still ride that 4'6" international derby beautifully because they're good riders, not because they're good hunters, just because they're good riders. And that's the same way why a good Grand Prix jumper rider can technically also ride a Prix St. George dressage very, very nicely, very well, because all these Grand Prix horses, in order to be real, or most of them, in order to be realistic Grand Prix horses, they have to do shoulder ins, they have to do half passes, they have to do canter pirouettes, they have to do all these things. That doesn't mean the jumper puts his top hat on and his dressage saddle, and but they can ride it in a jumping saddle. You can take McLean Ward and tell him, here, McLean, take your Grand Prix jumper and ride a Prix St. George. And of course, easily he can do that, and that's the same with the hunters. My problem with the hunters is that this low-level hunter education is not going anywhere. That is my problem with it. It's just not teaching proper riding. It has advantages. There's good things to it, like the lower level hunter riding teaches quite nice rhythm and a quiet seat. So those are the only two advantages. It of course depends on the quality of the trainer. If you have a very good hunter trainer, a very good jumper trainer, also of course in the American system you can create very good riders. I mean, we see it every day. There are great riders here, and there are also great junior riders and great young riders. But they typically come out of a very, very knowledgeable professional barn. So good trainers can beat the system, of course. But that's also why you see when you go to a recognized bigger show, you watch the high children jumper class, which is 1.15 m or 1.20 m. You almost exclusively see riders in there that are with the big Grand Prix trainers, and it would be very, I know what everybody says then, yeah, because they have the money, blah, blah, blah. Typically, yeah, the higher level trainers, they attract some, higher purses, or how would you call it, them richer people, and they're able to buy better horses. Yeah. But you also see, some good riding in these 1.15 m classes, and it's typically the kids with the higher level trainers. On the other side, you see barns that are not so high quality, and they bring hundreds of kids into the system. They bring 500 kids into the USCF system in the last 10 years, and not a single one of these kids ever rides a meter class, just because they get stuck in 80 centimeter jumpers, in all this low level hunter stuff, just because the trainers are exclusively doing, a lot of them, what the organization is telling them to do in order to be successful. The Grand Prix trainers, or the good trainers, they know how to beat the system. They know that the kid's not supposed to race in 80 centimeter classes, and they kind of figure their way out around the system to still make these riders successful and teach them how to ride, of course, and that sets them up for higher level stuff down the road. But your average Joe barn is not beating the system and has no interest and no qualification to beat the system, so they just do whatever the system tells them to do. Oh, yeah, we do 70 centimeter racing class today, so I guess you need to race, Susie, because we won the blue ribbon. And then they stand at the in gate and they scream faster, faster, faster. It's mind blowing. There's no interest and no qualification and nothing in order to beat that system. And it's sad that you actually have to beat the system in order to do the right thing. And that's what pisses me off. I'm convinced, I can guarantee you, if the same barn with a not so knowledgeable trainer who brings in 500 kids into the USEF system, and every single one of them is going nowhere, if the same trainer with the same knowledge brings the same 500 kids into the UDJC system, at least 200 of them learn how to ride. You know what I mean? Just because you're focusing on something differently, on a different path. And then what a lot of people say always here in the US is like, well, the trainers train for the show. The trainers don't train for learning how to ride, or, the horsemanship part of it whatsoever. They train particularly for the show. And that's what makes it not good. Well, it's not really the case. You just have to train for the right thing. If you train for a UDJC show particularly, and you say, I'm training for being good at the 80 centimeter style class, yes, please go ahead, train for that every day. Train for being good at these shows. Don't train to be good at the USCF shows. And then, of course, starting at a meter 20, meter 25, then it's kind of the same-ish. Then we have time classes as well, and we have jump-off classes and all these things. So my main concern with the American system is pretty much everything up to a meter 10, but that's the most important thing, of course. Young horses, next problem. If you want me to get started on young horses, on that bullshit, that's a whole other story. Same thing. It's the same that happens with the beginner rider education, pretty much. The same problem is with the beginner horse education. It's not existing. And the shows are way too... Everybody always bitches about the breeding. We don't have good breeding here, and that's why we have to import horses from Europe, blah, blah, blah. But it's not the breeding. With access to the same stallions, there's some very good bloodlines here. We can breed horses here. The problem is we cannot ride horses, young horses here at the shows because it's too damn expensive. Like, if you wanna compare a 7-year-old jumping horse here with a 7-year-old jumping horse in Europe, then that 7-year-old jumping horse in Europe, and we can agree on that or not agree on that. It doesn't matter. I say it without a value. That 7-year-old jumping horse in Europe that typically does a meter 40 has been to 10, 15 shows as a 4-year-old jumping little 80 centimeter jumping classes, judged on the horse's quality, not judged on time or some bullshit. It's judged on the horse's ability to be a jumping horse. You take the horse to about 20 shows as a 5-year-old and another 25 shows as a 6-year-old. So typically, as a 4, 5, 6-year-old, the horse goes to about 50 quality shows. That's the experience of a 7-year-old jumper. If you take a horse in America to 50 shows as a 4, 5, and 6-year-old, that's going to cost you 50 grand or 60 grand or 70 grand, somewhere in that area. So you add that to all the expenses that the horse cost you already until it's 7 years old. If you don't sell that horse as a 7-year-old for 140,000 or 130,000, you lose money. So it's as long as shows are that expensive, we have no chance of competing with Europe when it comes to the horse market. It's insanity, so. Or you take them to the schooling shows around the corner, which are typically not very good. So those are your options. You either ride, a very shitty 80 centimeter class, again, with 12 jumps and combinations and broken lines, with your 4-year-old horse in somebody's backyard. And there are some good schooling shows, so I'm not saying that every schooling show is crap. It's not true, but a lot of them are, at least here in Texas. You don't want to take your 4-year-old to that. You don't want to have your 4-year-old stallion in an 80 centimeter class at any show in this country, where there's a bunch of racing kids in the warm-up ring, obviously. And then USCF has some young horse classes, but typically they're all just, the same. Oh, well, there you go. Here's your meter 10 racing class for 5-year-olds. Well, it's not for the horse. It's not for the sport. It's for nothing. It's just to add a young horse class to the mix. But let's not change the course. Let's not change the format. Just let's have, a bunch of 5-year-olds running through the same thing that we offered already the class before, and then move on to a meter 20. There's no concept behind it. It's sad.
What are your thoughts on the young horse thing? What are your thoughts on a year 1, year 2 type green horse plan rather than actually using the horse's age?
Zero
thoughts.
Yeah, I'm not no thoughts. Yeah, but I don't. Yeah, zero thoughts. I'm sorry. No, I don't. See, it depends on. It makes it complicated because look what's happening in the Green Hunters. People import a meter 40 Grand Prix horse from Europe, and then it has this, and I don't exactly know how it works, but it has some kind of green status, and they sell it as green eligible, and people buy it for a bunch of money because they can go and ride it as a green horse. It's ridiculous. Why? So. Yeah, if you have a 9-year-old that hasn't done anything yet, and you want to take him to a show, and the horse doesn't have any experience yet. Yeah, should there be a class for that? Maybe yes, maybe no. I say no, because you can also ride the your inexperienced horse in you can train it at home for a while and then ride it in a regular little 90 centimeter or meter jumping class.
So in your club, what would that horse's options be? Let's say someone has their 9-year-old and they're like, I'm doing this. So how would you then enter your club's organization at that point?
You can show it in whatever you want. You can come and ride it in a 65 centimeter class if you want to. You can ride it in a meter 20. It doesn't make a difference. You can ride it in whatever you want, but the young horse class, because the young horse class is particularly for young horses.
Is it the same format or a little bit different format in the open versus the young horse?
No, it's technically a different format, because the young horse classes are judged on the ability of the horse. So we have a young horse 80 centimeter class, which is on paper, theoretically, like it is everywhere in the world, an 80 centimeter class. We have a 5-year-old class, which is between a meter and a meter 10. And then we have a 6-year-old class, which is between a meter 20 and a meter 30, depending on what the show organizer wants to do. But those are the 3 different levels, technically, for 4, 5, and 6-year-olds. But still, even though, let's say, the 4-year-old class is our level A, which is an 80 centimeter class, that's level A, still horses between 4 and 6 years old can do that class. And then the meter 10 level L, which is technically for 5-year-olds, you can do it with a 5, 6, and 7-year-old. And the 6-year-old class you can do with a 5, 6, and 7-year-old as well. So even though the classes are considered 4, 5, 6-year-old classes, that's just in theory on paper pretty much. It's still open for a variety of ages in the young horse, and that's judged on the horse. The canter is judged, the rhythm is judged, the balance is judged, the jumping ability, of course, is judged. All these things, the age-appropriate development of the horse is judged. So that is really where we judge if the judge thinks that this horse has a future as a jumping horse, or a future as a dressage horse, or future as a hunter. We have a cool young horse concept for the hunters, which Liza Richardson here from Texas developed that concept, and we just kind of took it from her. With her agreement, of course. We didn't steal it. We have for the young hunters between 4 and 6-year-olds, we have you go into the arena, and there's a variety of different jumps, from a few little cross rails all the way up to 3'3" oxers and bendy lines and stuff like that. And you just show the horse in 3 minutes to the judge however you want. So if you come with a very green 4-year-old, let's say, you just want to probably ride around a little bit and jump over a few little X rails. And if you come with a more experienced 6-year-old, you can ride the 3'3" oxers and the bendy lines and all these things. So the rider decides, what do I want to show the judge of this horse? So that's a pretty cool class. So we have specially designed classes for young horses. And your 9-year-old, you would have to go into a regular class. There's no green status.
You still have a lower level, but the focus is not on judging the horse's potential so much. But
exactly.
It's still an option. You can start as...
It's still an option.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about some of your other class formats? You kind of gave us the rundown on the young horse there.
Well, like I said, everything below 95 centimeter is always style. So that's always kind of equitation, starting from 40 centimeters all the way to 85 centimeters. And the higher the level goes, the more jumps are in there. So in the 40 centimeter, it's 4 X rails from the trot. In the 50 centimeter, it's 2 X rails from the trot and 5 little 50 centimeter verticals from the canter. Then we have a special thing in our 65 centimeter class. The 65 centimeter class is still in a group format with the little dressage part in the beginning, or equitation part in the beginning. And then we added to every single 65 centimeter in UDJC, we added a grid. We added a gymnastic line, because we realized after 1 or 2 shows that not a lot of people are doing gymnastic lines at home. And it's very important for the horses, in our opinion, because it gives them quickness and balance and strength and all that. But it's also very important for the riders because it gives them quickness and balance and strength. And so we said, okay, what we're going to do, we added that to the rule book. We're going to put a grid in every single 65 centimeter class. And that's how they start. So they ride the little dressage part, and then they ride a cross as a bounce coming from the trot. So cross as a bounce, 1 stride to a vertical, 2 strides to a little oxer. That's how the 65 centimeter jumping course starts. And then there's 4 or 5 more little 65 centimeter jumps in that course. And then in the 75s, it's 8 jumps so we have that on the website. So if you go to the website and you go to rule book, then there's a sheet that pretty much shows all the different jumping classes and stuff. Then in the 95 centimeter class, then it's typically 9 or 10 jumps, so it keeps going up. So, but if you go into a 75 centimeter class, you never find 12 or 13 jumps or something like that. It's always between, I believe, 6 and 8 jumps, or 6 and 9 jumps, something like that. So the courses are very fair. They're not built for failure. They're built for success. So they're at the correct height, obviously, but there are no tricky lines in there. In a style jumping class, you don't want to set anybody up for failure, because that is still 75, 85 centimeter. That's still relatively low level. That's a lot of riders that still kind of try to put everything together. It's not like, oh, now you're a good rider. Now we're going to give you some challenges, where you might fail or might not. No, it's very simple to ride, or relatively simple to ride, and it's setting the rider up for success. And then starting at 95, like I mentioned earlier, we have a bunch of different stuff. We have pure time classes, we have jump off classes, we have we call it against the clock, which is a regular false and time class. We have joker classes, all this stuff. But the rule book also gives you the chance as a show organizer to say, I want to do a 1.40 meter style class. You can do that if you want, or you can do so a 1.20 meter class in UDJC could be a style class, it could be a jump off class, it could be a joker class. So it could be technically anything. So that's for the jumpers. And then our hunters start at 2'6", and they're very complicated to ride, because, like I said, I hate the low level hunter education. To me, or to us, it's the key to the hunters is learning how to ride, and you typically learn how to ride in dressage and in equitation classes and style jumping classes. So we say, learn how to ride your little dressage classes, ride your style jumping classes. When you get to 85, 95 centimeter and you get to first level dressage, which is our A level, and you do that well, and you say, I don't want to go fast, I don't want to go higher, I don't want any of this, well, then you're probably perfect in the hunters. But then you have a skill set that is required in order to ride 2'6" hunters, complicated courses. So where our style jumping classes are easier than regular 70, 80, 90 centimeter classes at shows, our hunter classes are way more complicated. So we have regular over fence classes. They're between 10 and 12 jumps. And then we have handy courses, which are between 12 and 14 jumps. And they're complicated to ride. There's a bunch of rollbacks. There's a bunch of, there are bounces, all kinds of things. So they're pretty much a derby course at 2'6" height. And then the division is always a flat class and 2 over fences and 2 handies. So we have 2 handies in each division starting at 2'6". And yeah, they're tricky. They're not your, everyday hunter courses. But, we want everybody to understand, learn how to ride first, and then you become a good hunter. Don't get on this low-level hunter path, because you're not going to become a good rider if the stars don't align and you have a very good trainer. You know what I mean? So Everything I say is always, it's not that black and white. I mean, there's of course, a lot in between. But if you go to a very good trainer and you say, I want to do hunters, they probably make a good hunter out of you. You know what I mean? But not in your everyday barns, everyday situations. It doesn't happen. You're caught in it.
And people that want to get into horses that are not already deep into it, they don't know how to spot a good trainer.
Oh, forget it. Forget it.
So that I know is a big piece of the issue out there is, like you said, there's a million trainers out there doing a poor job. One doing a good job, they've got a waiting list, so you can't get in anyway. There's no everything that is accessible to the average person who wants to do horses. Almost everything out there, when you look around, is low quality. Low quality. And I'm not trying to talk smack. I'm saying that as someone.
No, but it's the truth.
There,
I mean,
and then
it is the truth.
Get opened, and you're like, oh my gosh, what was I doing for those 30 years before I actually found other things?
And that's why it's even more important that the organization is on the right track. If everybody was in McLean Ward, nobody gives a crap what the organization is doing. You got your own path anyways, you do your own, it doesn't matter. But the lower the quality of trainers is, the more important is what I said earlier already a couple of times, that the organization puts you at least on the right track. You know what I mean? That's why it's so important, because a lot of the trainers are not good and they're not able to do their own thing and create, and beat the system and all these things. They just go with the flow. That's why it's so much more important that we give them a good flow. And I agree that we need trainer education. We need trainer certification. We need all these things. But realistically, that's a tough one, that's a 30 years from now. So 30 years from now, that is a long process to educate all the trainer and to bring back some old school knowledge and all these things. The knowledge gets shittier and shittier every year. The old knowledgeable people die, and they only gave 80% of what they know to the next one. So it's unfortunately a downward spiral, and that's also the same in Europe. If you go to a local show now in Germany and you compare it to a local show 20 years ago, it's a huge difference of quality riding for the worse. So it's bad now compared to 20, 30, probably 50 years ago, before my time. So the quality gets shittier and shittier. And yes, we have to educate the trainers. We have to bring some of this old school back. Everything has to, be a little... we need more quality, but who's going to do that? You know what I mean? It's hard. Who's going to tell all the trainers, oh, by the way, you got to get some education now, and then also education from who? So we talk about these things, but are they realistic? Not so much. And even if you can pull it off, it's going to take probably a couple generations to, I don't know. This is a little bit above my, so what we're thinking with UDJC, we're working on our own curriculum, and we're working on trainer education, and we're working on rider education, get stuff on paper and on video and all this. We'll do that. But then I think we have to go a different path. We cannot say, oh, you're technically not a trainer, you're technically not a trainer, you're technically not a trainer. Well, that doesn't work. Pointing fingers doesn't work. That's why we say we want to invite everybody to come to UDJC shows and experience it. And if you like it, and if you agree that this is the right thing for your program, if you say, hey, this is the first time I experienced something like that, which is for a lot of American trainers, they say, hey, this is such a cool show. This is such a cool concept. My kids get feedback. They learn something. It's awesome. And if you as a trainer like that, well, then come on in. We can help you. We can give you some education. We can give you all these tools, but it has to come from the trainers. We cannot point fingers and say, and also USEF cannot do that. We cannot point fingers and say, you're not a trainer. If you don't do this and this and this, then, it might be something for the long run, for the kids that are 4 now, to maybe when they become a trainer, when they're 25 and 20 years, that they have to get some kind of, testing, whatever, but it's nothing that we can do in the next year or 2 or 5. But changing the show system and helping these trainers putting their kids, and I always say kids, by the way, I don't mean kids, I mean beginner riders. It just happens because we only have kids in our riding school, hundreds of them. I always say kids. I mean amateurs as well, beginner riders in general. That's what I should have said that in the beginning. But if the organization helps the trainers training in the correct way or on the correct path. And that is way more important than permanently screaming for trainer education, trainer education, trainer education. Well, who's going to educate them, and who's going to go there to be educated, to be honest? If you have a training program, it doesn't matter if it's a high quality program or a lower level quality program, you're typically busy. You know what I mean? You're running around. I mean, who do you know that has a barn, and it doesn't matter in which quality? How many of them that have a barn say, oh, I'm sitting on the couch a lot. I wish I had something to do. Or I might go get some education somewhere because I'm bored out of my fucking mind. Nobody. Everybody who has anything to do in the horse world professionally has a lot of stuff to do. And nobody has time to go somewhere for weeks and months to get education, because we cannot do a Zoom call here and say, oh, by the way, guys, let's give you some education. We do a 30-minute Zoom on Wednesday, and we do a 50-minute Zoom on Saturday, and then you have some education. That is a bunch of nonsense. Takes 30 years to get education, So how do you want to do that? It's complicated.
Yeah.
Putting everybody on a better system, that is that is a big game changer that we can do quickly. And then we can see what else can we do. But first we need to change the show scene and the system, and then the rest is going to follow. That's my opinion. It's not the other way around. The other way around doesn't work.
You mentioned feedback. You're actually giving feedback, at the time of the class, and it's over the loudspeaker for everyone to learn from, not just some scribbled out dressage card or something. So tell us a little about that. I think that's a really awesome feature.
So it's on the speaker, because typically if you have a 13-year-old and the judge is talking to the 13, I've seen that a million times with my own kids at the shows. At the USDF has a class, like these equitation classes, dressage equitation classes. You get a little bit of feedback from the judge. And when my kids come out of the ring and I ask them, what did the judge tell you? You know what they say? They say, huh? They don't even say, I don't know. They say, huh? So that's the kind of answer you get from the kids when you, as a parent or a trainer, ask them about what the judge said. So we say, okay, it has to be on a microphone. It has to be for everyone to hear, for the trainers, for the parents, for the other competitors. So yeah, that's why it's on the microphone. And it's pretty much everything that is judged in UDJC has feedback on the microphone. It doesn't matter if it's hunters. You get a hunter feedback after every single round in the hunters. You get feedback from the judge. After every single style jumping class in the jumpers, you get feedback. And after every single dressage class, or the ability classes, you get feedback. In young horse classes, dressage, and in our benchmark dressage, that's one of our dressage paths. That's the regular dressage tests. You get written feedback from the judge, just like in USDF. But in our ability classes, and we didn't even talk about dressage yet, in our ability classes, you get feedback on the microphone. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And this is something that people love, So when I to be honest, I didn't expect it when I put the concept together, because this is also something that doesn't exist in Germany. So in Germany, you don't get feedback from the judges. You get your score and you don't get feedback. You get feedback in some of the young horse classes, some of the more important young horse classes, like the championships, national championships, and the breeding championships and stuff like that. You get some feedback, but not really, or not at all in regular dressage and jumping classes. And I thought, it would be kind of cool. And then I thought, are we going to do it? Are we not going to do it? And then almost like I flipped the coin and I'm like, okay, let's do the feedback, so it didn't even really, it was kind of luck that, that I flipped the coin to, okay, let's do feedback, and this was very important, because that is probably the biggest thing that everybody loves about UDJC is the feedback. So in ability classes, so let's talk a little bit about the dressage ability classes, because that's kind of interesting. The concept is interesting. So we have, one thing that USDF is not doing is they don't have a qualification system. So you can ride whatever you want. And that's, of course, horrible for the welfare of the horse. And it's also horrible for the quality of the sport, because you see a lot of people riding around in 4th level and pre-St. George and all that stuff. And they have no business being there. They're like 1st level riders. And here they are with their fancy wannabe German warm bloods in pre-St. George. It's horrible. And Well, we didn't want to have that, of course. So that's where we said, okay, you have to. And it's easier in dressage to do that than in jumping, because typically in jumping, if you're a meter 10 rider and you ride into a meter 30, well, you might die. In dressage, you don't die. You're just a shitty rider in a higher class. You know what I mean? So that's that we didn't want to have that. So we said, okay, we put a qualification system in. You need 3 good scores in the lower level or in whatever level in order to move up to the next level and so on. And then when we did that, I was sitting there and I thought, okay, so what are we going to do with the riders that are actually good high-level riders? We don't want to really tell them you have to start at training level and then qualify all your way up. But we also didn't want to take USDF scores and qualify them through USDF scores for UDJC classes, because I've seen some very shitty scoring at USDF shows. So I didn't want to do that either. So we developed the so-called ability classes, and ability classes are a completely different path. So our regular dressage path is called benchmark classes, and they're pretty much regular dressage tests, as you know. They go from training level to 4th level, or we call it from E level to S level, and you have 3 different tests per level. And then we developed ability classes. Ability classes are pretty much just a second path of dressage, also from E level to S level. And the difference is that only the rider is being judged, not the horse. So the quality of the horse does not matter. That's another thing that we need to get in people's heads in dressage. Before it's not some higher level riding, don't worry about the quality of your horse. You don't need a German warm blood. You need a horse that is suitable for your skills. You might need an appendix, you need a thoroughbred, whatever it is, but it's typically not a German warm blood that you need. And I don't know when that happened, probably 20 years ago. And this might be an international thing. I don't know if this is an American problem or an international problem. I don't know. But Europeans did such a damn good job telling every dressage rider in America, if you don't have that fancy German horse, supposedly, then you cannot be good at this sport. And it's so sad, because we want to get back to ride whatever horse you like and come to the show and enjoy it and be successful being a good rider. The focus needs to get back to riding the horse and training the horse correctly, instead of an unrealistic rider, an unrealistically trained horse that maybe or maybe not looks fancy and has German papers. That's another problem. So in ability classes,
show us your dressage on your horse.
Exactly.
You need to see the leg flinging and the bendy necks,
Yeah, exactly. So just the ability of the rider is judged, and the rideability of the horse. So we don't judge the gaits, we don't judge the impulsion. You don't need a quality horse in order to be successful in ability classes, even at the higher levels, even in 4th level, in our S level. You don't need a kick-ass horse. You can come with your thoroughbred that is very limited in its gaits, and if it's well ridden and it's bendy and it's in front of the leg and you ride it well and you ride your movements well, you win the class and you get a damn good score. So we need to get away from all this horse quality thing. It's at a very serious level and the higher levels and international levels, of course, it's the quality of the horse. It's the sport of dressage. It's judged on the quality of the horse, obviously. But there's a lot of path to go before that becomes so important. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Anyways, and there's no qualification also for these ability classes. So if you think you are a high-level rider, if you think you are a 4th level dressage rider, you can come into 4th level ability classes. So there's no qualification mode for these ability classes. Mm-hmm. And also they look a little differently. We have 3 riders in the ring together, and they ride the free part. The free part is about 10 to 12 minutes, where the riders ride around just like in a lesson or a clinic, and the judge gives them level-specific movements to ride. So everybody knows what these level-specific movements are. They're let's say in a 3rd level test, it's of course shoulder ins and half passes and flying changes. So the riders ride around in the arena, and the judge says, now I want to see some shoulder ins. Everybody writes some shoulder ins. And now I want to see some flying changes. Everybody writes some flying changes, and so on. And that free part, of course, is judged, but only with collectives. So you get, depending on which level, typically 4 different scores or 4 different marks for your seat and aids, the accurate use of the arena, the submission, general impression, general appearance. That's a funny thing that I put in all the low-level stuff, dressage and jumping. It's called general appearance. It means, is your bit clean? Is your tack clean? Are you well put together? How did you turn out the horse and all that? Because I just got sick and tired of my kids. I took my full training kids at the riding school. I took them to shows, bit dirty, boots dirty. Well, what I did, I took them back home. I just said, okay, we went, unloaded the horse, pulled the bridle out, dirty bit, whoop, bridle back in, horse back in, back home. Didn't let them ride. But those are my kids, I have control over them, but then the other ones I don't. So we said, okay, you know what? We're gonna put a score in for that. Only if your stuff is clean, you get a good score. If your bit is filthy, you get a bad score. You're not going to win the class. Well, don't show up in a filthy bit. Learn responsibility. Anyways, so the free part is scored with 4 different collectives, level specific again, and then the rider gets feedback after the free part. So the judges bring everybody in and they say, about a minute, 2 minutes, about hey, I really liked your shoulder ins. I really liked your half passes, but I didn't like your flying changes because of this and this and this. And why don't you try this or that? So just, a couple tips, and a little bit of feedback. And then after this, everybody individually writes a small pattern part, but only the most important movements technically in that level. And also not to both sides, just to one side. So not like in the regular dressage test, where you ride a half pass left and a half pass right in the trot. We just cut that down to one side. So a ability third level would look like you canter in, you no halt, no salute, you half pass to the left, you ride a flying change, you ride a medium canter, and you go back to a trot, and you ride a medium trot, a half pass the other way, and a shoulder in and a halt, something like that. So it's like a minute and a half of a pattern where we want to see, okay, the rider can not only ride all these things in the free part, they can also put it together. So it's technically an evaluation of your skills. In a 4th level ability test, S-level ability test, we want to see that if the rider is a capable 4th level rider, because you can cross qualify with ability classes. Instead of climbing the way up the benchmark tests, you can go and get 3 good scores in ability classes and then cross qualify for that level into the regular dressage tests. So an experienced higher level rider would just come, ride 3 ability classes on S level, and then pretty much unlock the whole UDJC dressage universe with that, because we can see. So the funny thing is, when I created the ability classes, I just thought about it as a kind of, shortcut qualification mode. But then running them and talking to so many people, and people love these ability classes, especially in dressage. 98% of them, 99% of them are amateurs, and amateurs just want to come to the horse show to be competitive, but also have a good time. And they say, hey, this is so much better than the regular dressage tests, because first of all, they're not that long. The pattern is not that long. And second of all, I'm in there with 2 or 3 other people, and it's so much fun, and I can walk for 10 seconds if I need to in the free part. And, it's serious, it's judged, it's a competition, but it's still a looser atmosphere. It's not this, now I'm going to go in my test, and then for 6 minutes I try to do a sitting trot, and the judge is looking at me all the time. It's not like that. It's a very nice atmosphere. It's a cool concept, and people love the ability concept. So most of them do not even want to go into benchmark tests anymore. They say, I want to stay in ability classes all the time because they're so much more fun. And then also by combining dressage and jumping classes at shows, we had at our last show here in Katy, we had 38 kids in our training level, 38 riders. Sorry, I said kids again. 38 riders in our training level dressage. It's unseen in Texas. 38 riders in a training level dressage test in a dressage arena. Most of them with their jumping tack, but they're like, oh, cool, there's dressage going on over there. Or the trainers tell them, hey, there's we might write some dressage classes at the next show, and the kids are excited about it. And 38 of them came over and rode a training level. And guess what? All of them said, oh, this is not as bad as I thought. This was actually fun. This was really cool. And we're going to do that again. This is what we need to do. We need to get kids into dressage. It's a massive problem in the quality of dressage in this country is that there's not enough kids doing it. Almost none of them. I mean, you have a handful of kids that are typically trainer kids or trainer grandkids or something like that. But if you start riding in Houston, where Houston is a city of 6 million people in the area here, with a lot of riding schools, if you start riding in a riding school in Houston, the chances that you get connected with dressage is exactly 0%. 0%. And this is sad because dressage is the base for everything. Well, the only chance you have is if you luckily end up at our riding school. But all the other riding schools are hunter riding schools. Or Western, of course. Well, that's a different story, But the chance is 0% almost that you make contact with dressage in your early stages of riding. And that's why no kids are at dressage shows, because nobody does it. It's the dressage barns, they don't have lesson programs typically, at least not in Texas here. Not really, not in Houston, none of them. So you start riding in a hunter jumper barn. You don't start riding in the dressage barn. The dressage barns are for the old ladies pretty much, at least here. And then you have a lot of them. Oh, I used to do hunters. I used to do barrel racing, but now I had 3 kids and now I'm scared of everything. So I ride dressage. That's typically how it goes, unfortunately. And we need to change that. We need to get kids into the sport if we want to make it better.
It's kind of like the same sad story of the hunters. Like when it's kept separate, it turns into something that it was never meant to be in the first place.
Yes.
And now it's where people just live, and they're so limited because they're allowed to live there. Basically.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's what I meant earlier. With the thorough education. If you do hunters because you realized as you got some skills in riding, you realize, hey, I kind of did a few different things and I'm kind of good at it, but I really like the hunters. Well, perfect. Knock yourself out. Ride hunters. It's cool. But don't only do that and be in. You said it better than I did. So that's exactly right.
When I first detoured from traditional hunter jumper land, let's say, one of the first things I did was I know I need this dressage foundation. So I started to seek that out. But in doing so, again, it's that thing, you don't know what you don't know yet. The answer isn't just, oh yeah, I'll take dressage lessons, all as well. Well, if you take the dressage lessons from the people who are only doing dressage and they're scared to go hop over a cross rail and the horse can do nothing but live in that rectangle, you're not doing yourself any good. It's this well-roundedness that is where magic happens.
Yes, exactly. And that's exactly what it is. It's the well-roundedness. Nothing that if we keep the disciplines far away from each other, nothing's gonna change. Nothing's gonna improve. My wife is the best example. She's a pretty good dressage rider and a pretty good jumper. She also did both in Germany. And behind us is a cowboy. Behind us, the property is a reiner. And sometimes she goes down there and she rides the reining horses for fun. The first time she went down there, the reiner's like, well, so how long have you been reining? And she's like, never in my life did I sit in a Western saddle. And he's like, well, how can you be better than everybody here at the barn in reining? Well, because she can ride the horse. It's all the same. If you can ride the horse, you can ride the horse. And then it doesn't matter if you do hunters, jumpers, dressage, even reining, it's like, just learn how to ride the horse and don't just sit there and think because you rode over a 1 foot hunter class. Now you're awesome because somebody gave you a blue ribbon or
Amen.
Yeah,
Amen. Yeah. Now we've talked a lot about the foundation and education side of things. As far as the affordability and accessibility side of things with your show, how does that look? How are you making it more affordable and more accessible?
I don't know. I don't know how we make it more affordable, because I don't know what all the other ones are doing with all the money that people throw at them. You know what I mean? Like, for us, we're not doing rocket science, So we run shows at the Great Southwest Equestrian Center that cost us $25,000 in rent, and we can run that show, breaking even, making a little bit of profit. We need to make a little bit of profit for our marketing and all that. So we as an organization are not profit driven. That organization at the moment cost me a bunch of money. So it's not like, oh, cool, we do this, we do this, and this is seriously true. We do this because we want to change the sport for the better, and we want to change the welfare of the horse for the better, and we want to change it for the riders for the better. So it's not monetary driven. So, because if it was, we wouldn't rent the Great Southwest Equestrian Center for $25,000 in order to run shows there, because it doesn't make any sense. But we have other people that run our shows that just come home from St. Louis. We just had a show in St. Louis at the National Equestrian Center, which is not as expensive as the Great Southwest. And we can run these shows making money without charging a bunch of money. The average cost, let me tell you this, at our Katy show here, and that is a bigger show. That is, people come on Thursday, they ride warm-up classes on Thursday, then they ride typically 3 days. They ride 2 or 3 classes on Friday, on Saturday, on Sunday. They have a stall for 3 nights. They have shavings. They have all the class fees, all these things. And the average bill is about $350 for technically 4-day show at the Great Southwest Equestrian Center. And it works. So we have volunteers, but we have good volunteers. We have in-gate volunteers. We have jump crew volunteers. And I'm just sick and tired of, show organizers saying, oh, but you can't do it with volunteers because they're not reliable, blah, blah, blah. Well, then you got the wrong volunteers. But I'm not paying a course crew. I'm not paying 3 guys $400 each to be in the course to pick up poles. It's ridiculous. And everybody who tells me, oh yeah, but you have to be good as the course crew, bullshit. It's all money-making crap. So we don't do that. We pay the judges, and that's pretty much it. And everybody who wants to put together a show needs to be able to find 3, 4, 5 volunteers. So that's I don't know how we do it, but it's very easy to do.
Even if you took volunteers out of it, if the bill was that low at $350 for what you described, you got a little room, I think. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if you did have to lose the volunteers, that's ridiculously cheap compared to what people are paying.
So if we go to let's say a different format, we had a show in Louisiana 3 weeks ago at a wonderful place in Louisiana, which is a private farm. They have 3 arenas. It's a wonderful place. They have a good footing, class appropriate footing in all arenas. And if you trailer in to one of these shows without all the requirements of the Great Southwest Equestrian Center, health certificates and all that stuff, if you trailer into one of these shows, the only thing you pay is you pay for your classes. So you come and ride a class for $30 and another class for $35, and you can show technically the whole weekend trailering in for $120 or something like that, and you can ride 4 quality classes at a good facility with very well designed courses. Yeah, how do we do it? I don't know. You got to ask me, how are the other ones doing it to not be able to do that? I cannot tell you that. There's a podcast, you probably know it, I forgot their names, the guys who run the Split Rock show. They have one episode in their podcast where they talk about horse show fees, and I quit listening to it after probably 20 minutes into it because I couldn't deal with it anymore. It was ridiculous. So go ahead, listen to that, and then how the other ones do it. But I don't know how. I don't know what to tell you, So it's not rocket science. It's, if you have a few good people, you can run a show with 200 horses in 3 rings with 6, 7 good volunteers, and nobody can convince me from something else because we're doing it, So yeah, it's possible. You don't need 8 TDs and 14 people in the rings and 8 at the gate. It's crap. Okay. We run, and this is, I don't want to sound like, oh, this is how we do it in Europe, blah, blah, blah. But we run shows, with 1.60 Grand Prix. local shows, but local show is a different term. A bigger show in the local area, and it goes up to $1.50 national 3-star event that pays out $50,000 for the winner and stuff. And that show is mainly ran by volunteers, and they're wonderful shows, great footings, great everything, and it does not cost you $50,000 to put the show together. It's ran by volunteers, or mainly, and the judges are no volunteers, of course, and then typically your show office is not a volunteer, but the guys tracking the arena, well, they're volunteers. The guys picking up the jumps, they're volunteers. Volunteers don't have a very good reputation here, because every show organizer I talk to and I mention, hey, use some volunteers for these jobs. Oh, no, we tried that. Well, I don't know. I tried it too, and it worked. So I don't know what to tell you.
And I can only guess that might be related to that upbringing stuff that we were talking about. These are people that they're coming to do horses, and they've always done it with a groom. And the horse show is a very different experience for some people than sweating and working all day. That's not what a horse show is for a big chunk of people,
Yep.
So.
Yep, indeed.
Indeed. Now, so you've had a handful of shows so far in a few different locations, not just in Texas. What kind of feedback have you been receiving?
99, and I'm not lying, you can ask everybody, 99% of people love it, like for real. And this is throughout the board. We have little kids that come to their show with their parents and their trailer. We have professionals that bring 10 young horses and ride everything from young horse classes up to meter 30s. We have A barns, if you want to say it like that. We have A show barns. We have local barns. We have very local barns. All kinds of. We have a very big variety at our shows, and we haven't gotten a lot of bad feedback yet. So I haven't seen anybody yet that says, oh, but, getting feedback from the judges kind of sucks, or, having good courses to ride kind of sucks, and being on time is horrible. I hate it. So we get some suggestions and some feedback towards, hey, why don't you do it like this or that? But the general feedback is actually 100% positive. I haven't seen anybody yet coming to our show and then saying, oh yeah, it was kind of shitty, we're not going to come again. So the opposite is the case. The shows are getting bigger and bigger. We're getting more and more shows on the schedule. We had a super cool show this last weekend in St. Louis. People were super happy again. Very good feedback on social media everywhere. So, and it's not only they tell it to my face. I mean, I hear talking also behind our backs, and you don't hear a lot of bad things about UDJC shows.
Good. Excellent. Now, where do you see the UDJC going in the next 10 years? What are you hoping for? Spreading farther and farther around the country?
Yeah, of course. So we have, we're going to have 50 shows this year, probably at the end of the year. And we're going to have 200 shows next year. Most likely that we're going to put on the schedule, maybe even a little more. And, well, I don't know. I don't know. I want USCF gone, to be honest. Or completely changed. You know what? Seriously, I'm serious about that. If USCF would say today, okay, we're going to change dramatically and we're going to do the right thing, I would be so happy, because then I don't have to do it. You know what I mean? I do this because somebody needs to do it, not because I have so much time on my hands. We have one of the biggest riding schools in the country. I don't have a lot of time. So, but I do it because it has to be done. So, but USCF, the way it is, needs to be gone, or completely transformed and changed. So, yeah, hopefully in 10 years, we have 10,000 shows every year, and we changed people's minds, and we changed, all this old school thinking of this low-level hunter education is the right path, and keeping dressage and jumping separated is the right path, and chasing points for the local hunter jumper association is the correct path. All that is not the correct path. Going to shows to chase points, to get some dumbass year-end ribbon, it's not what it's about. It's not what the sport is about. But we make it about this, and that's a big problem. I always say this sport, if you do it correctly, if you educate your kids correctly, if you bring them up correctly, if you make them hardworking, if you make them clean stalls, if you make them do all these things that the sport comes with, you can create some badass people. You can create some badass kids. If you don't do that, you create monsters. And this is in no sport the same way that you can use it in order to create the most horrible people, and you can create the best people. You know, the variety is huge, and it all depends on what do you do in your program. And I'm also getting a little sick and tired of people always blaming the kids and the parents. You know, it's so easy. So many trainers always say, oh yeah, what do you want to do with the kids these days? Nobody wants to work anymore. And then you got the parents on top of that, and they're even worse. Yeah, I get it. It gets shittier and shittier all the time. Society changes and everything goes kind of downhill and everything gets weaker and blah, blah, blah. I get all of that. But it's still, for me, this is on the trainers. This is up to the trainers. So our program is, as you can imagine, very, very strict and very, very German. I cannot do it differently, you know. So and we start kids at 2 years of age. We have hundreds of kids in the riding schools. A lot of them are 2 or 3 years old. And then we have our full training program. And our full training program, you can only get into when you come out of our riding school. So we don't allow anybody from the outside in our full training program. So everybody who comes into the full training program kind of knows already, oh shit, that is strict, you know. So it's a different mindset. And because everything is hands-on and everything is strict and everything is a little old school, I would say, you know, it's like probably our programs like in the 80s, you know, it's not all this, it's strict, and we'll keep the parents out of it. We tell the parents, go home, go into the car. We don't want you to be involved. You don't need to be here. It's a different program. Anyways, we have about 20-25 kids that are real barn rats. They're like at the end of the riding school cycle, like almost getting ready to buy a horse or lease a horse. Some of them can't, but they hang out at the barn all the time. These 20-25 kids, I would say between 10 and 14 years of age, they can do everything. They can pull horses out for the vet and tell the vet exactly what's going on. They can put horses on the trailer. They can tack up and ride every single horse you give them. They can do everything at shows. They're really well educated, and they're good kids. You know, they see things. They, you know, you don't have to tell them, hey, here, can you pick up that poop or whatever. They're really badass kids. But I guarantee you, if these 20-25 kids would have started riding in a different barn in a different program, they would not be badass kids. They would be like a lot of the other ones that cannot even put a halter on a horse. So it's the trainer's responsibility to make these kids good. And if you get in trouble with the mom because you know, if the mom, I mean, they have their opinions, the moms, but to be honest, I don't care about the mom's opinion, because I don't go to a gymnastic school with my daughter and then have an opinion about the gymnastic class. I don't know anything about gymnastics. I don't know anything about tennis. Why would I take my son to a tennis class and then say to the trainer, oh, but I think you have to play a little bit more forehand today because the backhand last will. Who cares? Who cares about my opinion when it comes to tennis? So I don't really care about the parents' opinion about riding a horse. So, and we're very strict about that from the very beginning, from early stages. And a lot of trainers, I think, are scared of the parents, and they're scared for them to leave and blah, blah, blah. But I think they leave when there's not a real program and not a real guidance and not a real plan behind it. Do you know what I mean? We're very strict from the beginning, and that's why we're able to create a bunch of really, really good kids. My full training kids, some of them are eight years old or so. They go to the show by themselves. They go to the show by themselves. A couple of years ago, I had to go to Germany with my wife, and we had back then the kids were 9 and 11 or so, and they said, well, it's too bad you're going to Germany because we wanted to go to that February show here in Katy. And I said, well, then go. And they're like, well, but you're not there. I'm like, yeah, well, you don't need me. So I told the mom, how to hook up the trailer to my truck. Caroline and I were in Germany. The mom drove the kids to the show. The kids put their horses on the trailer, paraded them, unloaded them at the show, walked their courses, went to the show office, warmed up, told some other trainer, hey, can you put that vertical up for me like this? And, they're 9 and 11 years old. They went to a jumping show by themselves and did everything themselves. And then they came back home. It's the most normal thing for us that everybody needs to be able to do all of that before they can even go to a show. Like I never went to a show with my trainer, and this is just a different mindset, or not a different mindset is the wrong word. It's a different culture. Like this whole trainer thing, like it is here, does not exist in Europe. You go to a normal barn and, you have 40, 50 horses at the barn, and most of them are kind of privately owned. Some of them are eventers, some of them are jumpers, some of them are old, some of them are young. It's a complete mixed culture, and everybody has their own little 2-horse trailer aluminum trailer that you can hook up to a Volkswagen Golf, or any kind of little car. You can hook up your own little 2-horse trailer, and everybody trailers to different shows. You have 5 shows at the same time, different show, and 3 people go to that show, 4 people go to that show, 1 goes to the other show. The trainer stays at home. The trainers do not go to the shows, and you also don't stay overnight if it's not a bigger, more international show, or a very big local show. Technically, you don't stay overnight, but that is also caused by short distances, obviously, so I'm not putting any value on that. It's just different here, because everything is far away, or a lot of things are far away, and the trainer takes the trailer and takes 10 horses with her. So it's a different country, obviously, so I'm not saying, oh, we need to go back, but the equestrian center is 10 minutes away from us, so we do a lot of trailering in, trailering out, and the kids go by themselves as well to the equestrian center without me and ride shows there. And that's a little bit kind of, where we have to, at least, I mean, you can go to shows with your trainer, obviously, but be able to do all these things by yourself.
Well, and at this point, I don't know really. I guess it'd be interesting to know how long the groom culture has been such a thing here. But at this point, I know that there are generations of trainers that, they grew up in the groom culture. How could they possibly teach those kids? They
can't.
Like they never lived it themselves.
Yeah.
I know, for me growing up, learning horsemanship was like, we're going to learn to braid and wrap and like
everything.
Bathe. Now these are not, on one hand, everybody needs to know these things. On the other, there's a difference between like, oh, here's horsemanship day every once in a while, and here's a checklist, versus
of
like,
course,
this is a lifestyle, And there's a big difference. I started in it wasn't the lifestyle, the same way. It's more like, I learned this, I learned that, I checked the box because my horsemanship test on that one medal class said that I had to.
But you got to start somewhere. Every program has to start somewhere, and then it becomes a lifestyle and a culture down the road. It's not like, oh, welcome to our riding school. Here's your new fucking lifestyle. So you want to give them, you want to give them horsemanship classes, and they need to understand right from the beginning that this is more than just getting on a horse. Like in our riding school, everybody has to tack up the horses. It doesn't matter. Even the 2 and the 3-year-olds, they don't obviously tack up their horses, but they take the pony out, they brush it with the trainer, and then the trainer helps them to put the saddle and the bridle on. So even those very, very little ones, we don't just throw them on the horse and then put them back in the car. Even we start them that early with realizing, okay, there's a little more to it than just and then a lifestyle and a culture. I would say it becomes when they become barn rats, but that happens automatically. So you can tell the ones that become barn rats, they're the ones that might become good in this sport and in the industry, and the ones that you kind of have to force to your lessons and to the horsemanship lessons, they're not going to go anywhere anyways. But yeah, I know what you're saying. The horsemanship lessons and teaching that is not enough. You have to make it a lifestyle. Yeah, and I agree. But it doesn't come from the very beginning, but then also, where are these kids supposed to hang out? A lot of trainers don't want to have any barn rats because they say, well, they're bothering me, they're in the way, it's a liability and blah blah blah, all that. Well, yeah, it's a lot of problems, and these kind of problems are very hard to fix. Like fixing the show landscape, that's one thing. We can do that. I'm very confident that in the next 5 years, the show landscape is going to change a lot. I can tell you that. I know that. But then changing everything kind of behind it, well, we can just hope that it kind of comes with the show. I believe you have to change the show landscape in order to change everything else, instead of changing everything else and then giving them a show landscape. Or I think changing the show landscape has a much bigger effect on everything else than, I mean, all these people that write curriculums and all that, for what? Who's gonna read them? Why would anybody read them? If you need good education, it's already out there. And if not, I mean, why would a trainer, and this is what I said earlier, why would a trainer say, with a barn full of horses, why would they say, oh, I feel like I need some more education? Well, they don't have time for more education. And they don't feel like they need more education. Most of them don't. And the ones that the ones that are open-minded enough to say, hey, I need some education, well, they find proper education already. We don't need 5,000 different curriculums that are not based on anything. What do you base it on? Why would anybody take your curriculum and for what? You know what I mean? But if you create a curriculum that is connected to a show circuit, well, then there's a reason to read the curriculum and to learn, because then you have something out of it, because you might be more successful at the shows. Your kids might be more successful at the shows. You can teach them a better way and get rewarded for it. A dry curriculum, there's no reward in it, and people don't do anything without a reward. And typically, your personal education for most people is not reward worthy. You know what I mean? You don't think, oh my God, I feel so good because I read another book and this is, whoo, I wonder what people think if they know that. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not a reward, but being successful at something is a reward. And this is also one let me tell you one funny thing. When I hear parents say, oh, Lindsay, it's not about winning or anything. We do this for fun. Well, no, we don't. Because if you do something for fun and there's nothing, no success connected to it, you're not doing it for more than 5 times, which doesn't mean that we have to put the success above everything. That's not what I mean. But people in any sport are not doing something if they're not successful at the same time. That's why success is important in the sport, and that's why we have to reward riders for doing the right things. Riders need to be successful doing the right things, because the kid, it doesn't matter how much fun they have, they're going to be last only so many times before they say, fuck this, I'm not going to go to the show and be last again every single time. Might as well go play volleyball or something like that, Mm-hmm. So the fun is only, or most of the time, connected to success, or at least a decent amount of success. Maybe not winning all the time, but you need to do well. You need to be rewarded for what you're doing every now and then. In order to keep the drive up in a competitive program. And I'm not saying somebody who rides once a week and does a bunch of other stuff, it's not. But like my full training kids that ride 6 days a week, and they put they not only ride their own horses 6 times a week, a lot of times they ride the lesson horses, and they ride some other private horses that me and my wife have. We try to put them on as many horses as possible, and they put 3-4 hours a day, which is unfortunately 100% of an American kid's time, because if they go to school, they come home at 4 or 5 o'clock. They only have 3-4 hours of time a day. They spend 6 days of that at the barn. They need to have some success in order to keep on doing it. Otherwise, it's very hard. You know what I mean? It's not, let's do it for the fun, Zuzi. That's not how it works.
No, I think what you're saying is if you're someone that doesn't happen to have the money to just buy your way into the success on the way that the system is currently set up, then that is what it looks like. You could be there 6 days a week with the way the current system is. You could be there 6 days a week and not have the right horse, and you're not gonna get a ribbon.
That's another thing where I have a little bit of different opinion about the whole money thing. Is to me is an excuse. It's a big time excuse, because if you are gritty and you want this and you put your heart into that sport and you're ambitious, then you always find a barn where you can ride horses, where you can go to shows. I know 5 programs at least here in Houston that would take a badass working student immediately. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because there are good programs, and they also know that there are not a lot of gritty kids around anymore. And if they find one, they're happy they have them. You know what I mean? So if I don't want to hear the money thing. Is it a lot easier with money? Yes. If your parents buy you beautiful horses from Germany, blah, blah, blah. Is that easier than, going? It's easier, but it's also short term. And even if it goes all the way, it makes it easier. Yeah, whatever. But still, even with good horses, at some level, you need to learn how to ride. There's not a lot of shitty riders riding 1.55 meters. You know what I mean? With all the money in the world, buying the best horses in the world, you still need to be a good rider. Mm-hmm. Do you need to be as good as the one that has better horses? Well, who knows? It's such a small difference. But long story short, I believe if you're a good kid, even if you don't have a whole bunch of money, you can get somewhere in the equestrian world, in the money-driven equestrian world. You can still get somewhere. Mm-hmm. You have to eat a lot of shit. Yeah, you have to be somebody's working student where other kids your age get everything on the silver platter, and you have to swallow it, and you have to deal with it, and you have to deal with these other girls at the fancy barn where you are, the working student or the barn rat or whatever. You have to deal with them treating you like you don't belong in all the yes. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's doable. And if you're gritty enough, you can get anywhere you want, even without spending a fortune in the sport, and you can make your own horses. That is another story I want to tell, and it's going to be a very quick story, but it's an important story. My best full training kid, well, now she rides FEI junior level dressage, which is like a 3rd, 4th level dressage, and she rides 1.25 meters, 1.30 jumping with the same horse, by the way. This was last year. She was 14, because I got sick and tired of people saying, oh, the money and buying the horses and blah, blah, blah. I said, Emmy, this is what we're going to do. We're going to find a free horse on Facebook. It has to be sound, it has to be a healthy, free horse, but it has to cost exactly $0. And then you ride that horse by yourself. I'm going to be on the ground. I'm going to help you on the ground teaching, but you ride the horse yourself. And then we sell the horse and we buy a new horse, and we sell it and we buy a new one, and we sell it and we buy a new one. And let's see where we get at the end of the year. And this is what we did. We got a horse for free on Facebook. Emmy rode it, and we did it, by the way, very realistically. She had to pay $2,500 a month for full training, or she didn't have to pay, but we took it out of the system, and the farrier and the vet and all these things. So it was very realistic. It was the same scenario as if a kid would come with their free horse to our barn and spend all that money. So got the free horse, sold it 2 weeks later for $1,800 or something, bought another one for $1,200, sold it for $3,600, and so on. And we had to stop that, unfortunately, about in June, because we had to remodel our house. This sounds ridiculous, but we had a hole in the roof and we had a bunch of water coming in and we had a bunch of black mold in the house. So my family and we had to move away from the property, and then everything kind of turned out in the shit show. That was in the middle of the year. So we did this experiment only for a few months. And the last horse, she sold, the 14-year-old, riding these horses by herself, doing the advertising herself, writing the ads for the horses herself, making the prices herself. All of that she did by herself. The last horse we sold was, I think, 38 grand or something like that. 38 or 39,000 within 5 months of a 14-year-old getting a free horse and trading it and trading it and trading it. Within 6 months, it was 38 something $1,000, the 6th or 7th or 8th horse, so, and she could have done that more and more and more. So it's not, you can create something yourself if you have the tools. Mm-hmm. But if your trainers don't give you those tools, then you can't do anything. And then you rely on money. If you're your everyday hunter kid, and all you know is, what you're, all you know is if this is a 6 or this is a 5 stride on your diagonal in your hunter thing, then you cannot do that. Then you need somebody to buy you $150,000 horse for fake success in 2'6" junior hunter classes. Mm-hmm. If that's your mindset, if that's what you do, well, then you need $150,000 horse, Yeah. But if you can ride and you have a thorough education and you know what you're doing, well, then you can do whatever you want. Mm-hmm. That's just my opinion. You know what I mean? That's just.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I agree that it is possible, but it's like that's a story to tell for people to know, like, if you think that the money is the only way, here's the story. It's not the only way.
Exactly. And it's not the only way.
It's an eye-opening thing to go, okay, and maybe you are a unicorn trainer. Like we were saying, there's not that many good trainers that can set up a kid to do that.
No, it's not. No. There are a lot of trainers who do that, or who are able to do that. Well, not a lot of, but there are trainers who can do that.
There are. I'm not trying to say it's not possible. What I'm saying is if someone looks around and says, that story he just told, it's not possible for me, what it really means is, like, go out and find your skills somewhere else. If it feels not possible, if it feels like the money is the only way to do it, then you're probably stuck in a bubble. Yeah. You need to go find a different bubble. There is another way. If it feels like there isn't, take that as a, here's your sign. You know what I mean?
There's also a big difference. Our program and pretty much all the other programs, the difference is our full training program is, we do that. We have, I don't know how many, 13, 15 full training kids. We only have them because this is my hobby. If it's about money, we would kick all the full training kids out and we put more ponies on the property for the riding school, because that's where the money is being earned, is in the riding school part of it. Mm-hmm. The full training program is my hobby. So it's not monetary driven at all. I spend a lot of time at the barn with these kids. We do a lot of things that are outside of the riding school. I take them to auctions, I take them to bank appointments, whatever. I pretty much try, we look at real estate with realtors if we, decide we want to look at another property or something like that. Like my older full training kids, they're involved in a lot of processes around running a horse business, because I want them to be thoroughly educated, not only on the horse side of things, but also on the business side of things. So, it's not purely monetary driven. And that is probably the big difference between our program and a lot of other programs, where it's like, well, everything is being charged for, and another invoice and another invoice, which is technically what you have to do, if you live from that. But my full training program is separated from the rest of the business, technically, if that makes sense. So that's why we can do a lot of things that other programs cannot really do. And it's so exclusive, you know what I mean? Like I said, we don't even take anybody from the outside. We only take somebody into the full training program if we think this is a kid that is so good in the riding school that deserves to be on that full training team. It's not, oh shit, we need 2 more full training kids. Where can we find them? Let's go look at the other hunter barn over there. Maybe they have a couple of them that are unhappy and we can get them over to come to us. None of that. So only if there's an exceptional kid in the riding school, I take it into my full training program.
Okay.
So it's a little different.
Yeah. So it was one of these questions was, corner turners are people, horses, or events that change the trajectory of our lives.
One of the corner turners, I mentioned already earlier that I went to this first dressage show, and then the people from the local dressage society, they said, dressage is not for kids, and we need better horses and better. So that was actually what got us into having the riding school, because like I said, we only had 8 full training dressage ladies over here, and the plan was to just have them around so we can pay for the property pretty much until Magic Tech takes off, and that was a corner turner, because if they wouldn't have pissed me off so much at the dressage show, I would have never started a riding school. And because it was never the plan to come here and do horses in the first place, and especially it was never the plan on having a riding school. You know what I mean? This just happened because I got so pissed off at these ladies. Pretty much, it was a 1-second decision. Okay, now this is it. Now we have to do it. So that was a big corner turner. Otherwise, that if they wouldn't have pissed me off, that would have never happened, and UDJC also would have never happened. And then last year, regionals, that's pretty much when I decided that I have to do UDJC now. We went to regionals with 10 kids or so, dressage regionals here in Katy, and it was an absolute shit show. Again, toxic atmosphere, horrible judging. The atmosphere at the dressage shows is the actual biggest problem. So I forced the kids, of course, to ride dressage and jumping. Obviously, they're not allowed to pick one of them. So and they're fine with doing dressage. They like dressage. It's fine. But they hated going to the dressage shows because of the toxic atmosphere. They just feel like they're so unwanted. It's crazy. And we were at regionals dressage. We had like 10 kids, 10 horses with us. And it was so bad that on Saturday night we said, okay, pack everything into the trailer. We're going home. This is ridiculous. We're not even going to ride Sunday. And it was that Saturday night that I really flipped out at the horse show. And I said, okay, this is it. So came home and I told my wife, I said, I'm going to lock myself in the room now for 3 weeks, and I'm not going to come out until the concept is done. And I wrote the whole rule book and the dressage tests and all that in 3 weeks, locked into the house. That was another corner turner. That's when I really said, after 4 or 5 years of bitching and trying to change things, this was the point where I said, okay, now I'm really going to do it, because I can't stand it anymore. So those were the 2 kind of important corner turners to get things on the road for UDJC and the riding school, pretty much.
And has doing this, has this path that you've ended up on, has it changed anything about how you think about or run, or has it changed much about the other side of things, your personal riding or your full training program?
No. Well, it has changed the full training program a little bit, as we just don't go to any USCF shows anymore, and we just go to UDJC shows, of course. And my personal riding has not changed, because I barely ride. I almost don't ride at all.
Yeah.
Because see, we got these full training kids, and they help each other. So instead of, if one of the kids has a problem with the horse, I'm not getting involved. I'm not getting on the horse. I have one of the better kids get on that horse, and so that gives another kid ride time. It gives another kid experience trying to fix a problem for somebody else. And, so we have a whole level we have a bunch of different leveled kids, and whoever has a problem, typically somebody else fixes it for them or helps fixing it. And so I just if I get on a horse, it's at the last years, it's typically always if one of my good kids has a problem with the horse, and then they get on in short pants and sneakers typically, or flip-flops for like 5 minutes. That's my riding. It's getting on a horse for 5 minutes in shorts, and until I give it back to the kid and say, see, this is how you do it. So that's pretty much my riding. My private riding does not exist anymore.
Yes, gotcha. I hear you. All right. Well, here's the most important question of the day. If your fairy godmother granted you 3 equestrian wishes, what would they be?
First of all, we have to go back, not treating the horse as a baseball bat, a sport thing. You know, the horse is an animal, and the welfare of the horse needs to be above everything. So in a perfect world, all the horse abuse, all the bullshit, all the unknowledgeable people that do bad things with horses intentionally or unintentionally also would be gone. That is the absolute most important one. The second one would be just having a way better path for young horses and young riders into developing correctly, you know, and that could be getting rid of USCF. Obviously, it could be having all the trainers snip my fingers and all the trainers would be on a very good level. That would be awesome. You know, things like that. So they all kind of come together. But yeah, the welfare of the horse and coming back to good quality of riding and training, that would be awesome.
All right, you got one more wish. You got anything left?
Well, one more wish.
One more wish. Maybe
no,
it was that you actually got to ride.
No, I'm good on the riding. To be honest, I also don't have a big desire anymore to ride myself, because it's, to me, you know, I put all that desire into the kids. Like I've ridden a lot and I've won a lot, and you know, to me, there's not a real thing behind riding myself anymore. There's nothing that would really make me happy. There's nothing where I would say I want to achieve this as a rider in order to be happy. I'd rather have my kids, and my kids, I mean my full training kids, also my own kids, of course, but they're still little. But my full training kids, if I had a wish, see, that is a good third one. That at least one of my full training kids goes all the way to the Olympics. That would be awesome.
Nice. Okay.
Or even now, let's win the Olympics. That's better than just going there.
Okay.
So yeah, that would be a cool thing. So that's really a goal of mine, to create this super cool full training environment where, you know, okay, if you go through that program and you stick with that program for 10, 15 years, you're really going places, you know, like that would be really cool. Yep. That's it pretty much.
Love it. Well, how can people find you, and what's the best way to find out about your events or hosting an event?
It's all on the website, so udjc.org. You pretty much find all the information you need, but then we also are pretty decent on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. So pretty much all the information you need is on udjc.org and the socials. The social pages are UDJ Club. So on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, I believe it's the same. It's always UDJ Club. So United Dressage and Jumping in Short Club.
Okay. And udjc.org. Okay.
Yep. And our email is info@udjc.org. So in case somebody wants to write an email or have questions, always reach out to us. Like I'm technically on my phone 18 hours a day. My wife can tell you all about it. So whenever you have a question, we're pretty reachable.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I had a fun time chatting with you, and
thank you.
I hope to check out your shows sometime. They sound really awesome. I hope you enjoyed the show. Visit tamaraleebarrett.com for more info and links to our socials. Remember to click follow or subscribe, rate the show, and share with a friend. Until next time, happy horsing.